Has there been a moment in your life that you can reflect back on and say was one of the happiest moments of your life? Where you believed you couldn't be any happier than you were in that moment? And you remember every small detail because you were completely present and in the moment? One of those moments for me was the moment that I gave birth to my 2 children. And I got to meet them for the very first time, Isabella and Luca. Seeing their faces, their tiny fingers and toes, and hearing their voices, my heart was filled with so much love and joy that there was no amount of money that could ever make me feel this happy. I believe there is a common understanding that money can't buy the intangible things in life, like love, peace, and happiness. And these emotions are the reason and motivation behind everything we do. There was another moment in my life, however, a little over 10 years ago, where I felt the most unhappy I've ever felt. I was going through the motions in life, wearing many different masks, trying to meet the expectations of others, yet feeling like I was always letting people down. My relationships with those closest to me were strained, and I felt so alone. I believed that no one really loved me. And if I died, it wouldn't matter to anyone except my kids. At this point again in my life, it wouldn't have mattered how much more money I had. I would not have felt any happier. I suffered in silence for a very long time, believing that no one could understand why I felt so unhappy. This is because you could say that my life looked pretty perfect on the outside. I had achieved all the things that family, society, culture, and religion told me I needed to have a happy life. A fulfilling career, a beautiful, healthy family, our own home, cars in the driveway, vacations a year, lots of beautiful material things. And so if my life checked off all the boxes, how is it that I felt unhappy and unfulfilled with my life? I was one of those unhappy people living a very abundant life. But no matter how much more I bought, earned, achieved, or where I went or what I did, I always felt unhappy. I had been led to believe that happiness exists external to us in our possessions, positions, titles, degrees, relationships, and experiences, where we say things like, I won't be happy until, and we finish this phrase with statements like, finish my degree, get that promotion at work, buy that designer handbag, meet that perfect person, lose those 10 pounds, or go on that idyllic vacation. Happiness is supposedly found somewhere outside of ourselves, and we just need to find, buy, earn, or achieve it. The misconceptions about where happiness is found kept happiness away from me. And for fear of shame, loss of love, and rejection, I didn't share how I was feeling with anybody. And this had me spiraling down a very deep and dark hole where I thought, how could anyone understand how someone living a perfect life with so much abundance be this unhappy? The debate about whether money buys happiness has gone on for centuries, with arguments on both sides. Those that believe that happiness cannot be found in money and in the things that money can buy, and those that believe the more money you have, the happier you are. A popular study in 2010 by Conman and Deaton seemed to put this debate to rest. stating, happiness increases with income, but with no further increase after 75K. So it didn't matter how much more money you had, you weren't going to be any happier with millions in your bank account, thus proving that more money does not make us happier. Fast forward to 2023, where a follow-up study by Kahneman, Killingsworth, and Mellors reignited this debate. They reanalyzed the data from the 2010 study and a 2021 study by Killingsworth, and the results were fascinating. Happiness, according to the research, happiness still increases with income. However, the plateau in happiness levels that was originally reported at 75K is only experienced by the least happy 20% of the population, where more money does not lessen their unhappiness. However, for the happiest 30% of the population, happiness levels do continue to increase and at an accelerated rate after 100K. So this study points to the fact that for people who are unhappy, it doesn't matter how much more money they have, they are still unhappy, much like myself. It wouldn't have mattered how much more money I had, I still would have felt unhappy. So the question that stood out to me was, what is it about the happiest 30% of the population whose happiness levels continue to rise? For these very happy people, whether they have under or above the 75K income threshold, they are always happy. So what are these happy people doing? Whether they have less money or more money, they are always happy. I had reached a crossroads moment in my life where I had two paths to choose from. I could either continue suffering in my unhappiness, living the same life, or I could start making some changes and doing something about it. Things I had never done before. They were things that didn't cost any money. They are the intangible things. The happiness practices that I am about to share with you changed my life forever. And it turns out the positive effects these practices were having on me, which I didn't know at the time, have all been backed by science. And the amazing thing is, my happiness levels continue to rise with more of the happiness practices I integrate into my life. Doing the things that happy people do can help you to feel happier. And the money you have or don't have really doesn't have very much to do with it. And these are things that you can start doing now, today, and commit to making the happiness practices that resonate with you a part of your daily life, one small step at a time. First, when I began meditating over 10 years ago, I didn't know it was going to be a huge contributor to my happiness. I now know that meditation was helping my body to release happiness and love hormones like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin that were raising my mood and helping me to feel better about myself. With time, I started to love myself more, and I began replacing the negative self-talk in my head with positive and affirming statements instead of the limiting and sabotaging ones I had been saying on repeat for most of my life. By acknowledging the things that were preventing my happiness, I could begin eliminating them and instead surrounding myself with more of the things I did want in my life. Next, turning my attention inward was helping me to become more mindful and present in my life. I began to slow down and focus on all the things I did have instead of what was missing. The beauty of the world around me became that much more apparent as I became consciously aware of everything I was experiencing, moment by moment through my senses. On my walks in nature, the flowers were that much more colorful. The warmth of the sun and light breeze on my skin felt so good. I was delighted by the sounds I heard, and my meal times became longer as I began savoring everything from my morning coffee to my evening meal. Being mindful was helping me to ruminate less on the negative feelings about myself and my relationships. Being mindful was also opening me up to begin communicating my feelings with my husband and improving how I felt about the other relationships in my life. Lastly, living in the present moment led me to being more grateful for everything in my life, but I had neglected because I was so busy searching for that next best thing or attaining my next goal. I had decided to start a gratitude journal where every night I would try to think of 5 things that I could be grateful for from that day. I didn't know that gratitude was directly correlated with happiness. So the more grateful I was, the happier I became, and vice versa. Somehow, being grateful was also improving my interpersonal relationships at home and at work, where I began accepting the emotional support of my family, friends, and coworkers, instead of believing that I was alone and unloved. It was also improving my relationship with myself by enhancing my self-love and self-esteem. The happier I became, the more I prioritized working on my happiness because it was improving how I felt about myself and my life. I began to realize that happiness isn't about checking off all the boxes like the great job and huge bank account. Happiness is something that can be felt when you live in the present moment and you tune into it. And the more time you spend tuning into it, the happier you feel and the better your life becomes. Happiness does not increase with money. Happiness increases with more happiness. Aristotle believed that happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. So I ask you, how important is your happiness to you? I urge you to consider committing to making time for these and other simple practices that can help you to tune into your inner happiness so that you don't lose yourself in the external checklist. Your answer will also determine how happy our world can become, because happiness is a gift that we give to ourselves and to those around us. I'd like to imagine a world where we look back at our lives and the events that we consider the happiest moments of our lives are not few and far between, but rather the small moments of happiness that are felt day to day when we are really present and truly appreciating and savoring our life from the inside out. Thank you.
Welcome to another edition to Talking Wit, WIT, Kevin and Son, and the people you should know. I am Kevin McLemore. I am your show host. I'm a four-time published author, speaker, and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of our stories, our mission is to uplift your voice, inspire your stories and experiences using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose, very simple, hope, helping other people every single day. So, whatever your objective, successful people like my guest today, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that enhances their lives, and sometimes they pour into others. This podcast will reveal the highly effective secrets to not only an effective life, a good life, but a happier you. Today's guest will share with you some steps of becoming happier just for you and everyone else around you. Our guest is a multiple time TEDx speaker, which that's a big time in our field. Three-time best-selling author. She is the host of an internet, TV, and radio show, and the founder of the Next Steps to Happiness. So, if you are loving or looking for an answer to love, peace, or happiness, then your search is over. Let me welcome the happiness coach, my friend, Miss Teresa Greco. How you doing, T?
Doing so well. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
And I'm happy to be here with you. And for those of you that think that I kind of stepped out of line by saying hello, Mrs. T, I will say that in my neighborhood, when we give you a nickname, we have embraced you. We have brought you into the circle. So I know her name is Teresa Greco, but T, I'm happy to have you on the show. How's life treating you in Canada today?
Everything is going well here today.
Okay.
It's
You,
it's it is a Monday, and so it's a new, I mean, every day is a new day, but it is the beginning of a new week. And so I set the intentions to have a good week. And so everything's okay so far.
That's all right. You know what's going to happen when people hear this podcast, because there are people that get up every morning, because I know I hear it first thing in the morning. I am like this 24 hours a day. And you have no idea how many times people say, I hate seeing people like you first thing in the morning. I'm just feeling good about myself, and hopefully I'll make you feel good too. Why are people not happy?
Because they're not, well, maybe those ones are rolling off the wrong side of the bed, right?
Maybe they had to sleep on the couch.
Right? That's usually what we say when someone's a little grumpy in the morning, that they rolled off the wrong side of the bed. But I believe people are not happy because they're disconnected from the happiness that they are. I believe that our essential self, our original nature, our spiritual self is always, always loving, at peace, and happy in abundance. It's our disconnection from our spiritual self that causes us to feel like we're not happy.
That was beautiful. That is beautiful. You just touched my soul with that. That's all right. Um, you do this for a living. You coach people on finding answers to their many questions, and people, there's probably more questions than answers when it comes to finding out where your happiness lies or where does it live. Does happiness come with age?
No, happiness is a part of, it's like our arm. Happiness is a part of who we are always. It's that our mental self may not be in alignment with that. And so we're not thinking positive things, if we're not looking to the bright side, if we're not optimistic, if we don't have, hope and faith and all the good things that help us mentally to feel happy, then our emotional self may not feel happy, even though we might say, oh, my life is lovely. And they're going around with toxic positivity and they have the face on and everything. But your emotional self tells you whether you're really feeling happy or not. And then our physical self may not be in alignment, that we have aches and pains. We're not feeling excited, energetic. About the things that we have to do, about our life in general. So physically, we may not be in alignment. So it doesn't come with age. It's actually a return to who we were as children, because children are always loving, at peace and happy. And I'm an educator also by profession, a mother too of my own too. And you see that always in children. It's like the world gets its claws into us as we get older and then pulls us away from that truth. So it isn't about becoming happier with age. It's really about going back to a time within ourselves when we were our authentic self, where as children, we embody that authenticity until again, the world puts its claws into us and says, oh, we like you better when you look like this. We love you more when you act like that. We accept you more when you behave like this. And then we get pulled away from that. And so I think we reach a time in our life that maybe it's those crossroads moment for different people. For me, it was the milestone of turning 40 that had me taking a step back and reevaluating my life. But it could be a loss of some sort. It could be an accident, an illness, a death, lots of different things that cause us to take that step back and say, am I really happy? And that's, as I said, it was that milestone for me that helped me to realize that although my life looked perfect on the outside, I had achieved all the things that family, society, culture, religion told me I needed to have a happy life. So, fulfilling career, beautiful, healthy family, our own home, cars in the driveway, vacations a year, lots of beautiful material things. And so, if my life checked off all the boxes, how is it that I still felt unhappy and unfulfilled with my life? And it didn't matter how much more job experience I got, how much more education I got, how much more I tried to serve others. There was a feeling that there was something missing in my life. And it didn't matter how much more I bought, where I went, what I did, that feeling that something was missing wouldn't be filled. And that's often the people that I work with. It's those that have, 40 and above that have achieved all the things and still feel like there's something missing.
I'm glad you said the original source of happiness comes through a child. A couple of weeks ago, I walked outside of one of my health clubs and ran into one of the members, and she was with her 7-year-old child. I greeted her. I said, "Good morning. How are you doing?" Whatever. So I reached down, shook the young man's hand, and I said, "How are you doing?" And at 7 years old, he says, "I'm living my best life," as he shook my hand. And I go, "Wow." Coming from a 7-year-old, I've always said in my public speakings that we are examples of what has been taught and what's caught. And when we get to a point that we are now legal age to drive, it's the first time as an individual we become a part or a small version of who we are as our authentic selves because we're starting to discover our freedom. Um, how do you feel growing up within your own life? What was taught to you and what was caught, and how does that or conception or misconception of what your parents taught you or whoever raised you, how did that tie into you discovering your happiness today?
Thank you. Because through the living of my life, being surrounded by many well-meaning people, so our family, friends, educators, religious leaders that told me to have a happy life, it was going to be found in possessions, positions, titles, degrees, relationships, experiences, and appearance, where many of us find ourselves saying, oh, I won't be happy until I finish my degree. I won't be happy until I get that position at work. I won't be happy until I go on that vacation. I won't be happy until I find that perfect person. I won't be happy until I lose those 10 pounds. I won't be happy. Lots of different things. And so society, people, all people outside of me told me I needed all of those things that were on the checklist, not knowing that once you acquire those things, you might be happy for a little bit, and then you go back to feeling the way that you were, and then setting new goals and aspirations for yourself, thinking, okay, now what? Now where's like my next maybe hit of happiness going to be somewhere again in the future based on, any of those things that I mentioned.
Yeah, actor Jim Carrey had said in an article a couple of weeks ago, he says that now that he has accomplished everything that he had set out, he doesn't know what to do next. It amazes me for a person to have, like you said, all of those material things, have the accolades of being a superstar actor, having the freedom to travel all over the world and do all the things he wants, can afford to buy nearly anything that he wants at will.
Mhm.
And he asked the question, what does he do next? I had an answer for him, and my answer is to pour into somebody else.
Mm.
But what would you tell Jim Carrey if you were to sit across from him and he was to bring that up? Because peeling back the layers of that story, there's a lot more going behind that than just his success and trying to discover who he is. What would you tell Jim Carrey?
Mhm. Because our identity isn't us rolled up in all our roles and responsibility. That's where my identity was all caught up in that. That's how I had lost myself in the living of my life. How does somebody get to 40 years old and not know who she really is? Because my identity was all caught up in like the personality aspect of Teresa, all of the roles that I was living, trying to be the perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect daughter-in-law, perfect sister, perfect employee, perfect friend, on and on and on, living all up to external expectations and losing myself in the process, that I didn't know who the true and authentic self was because your identity is caught up in those different things. But I think when you detach from that identity and you figure out the truth of who you are, which is the infinite, eternal being, your spiritual self, that that part is infinite and capable of so many amazing things. And when you know that that's the truth of who you are, that you are a powerful creator made in the likeness of your creator, then there are so many things that you want to do. So when you said he said he doesn't know what he wants to do next, it's because our natural instinct is to create. Our natural instinct is the what next, is the what next. But the what next isn't, I believe, when you get to like a certain age, is understanding the truth of who you are and then living from that instead of the external expectations, the personality, the external identity.
Now, everyone is searching for answers to questions. How do you find out, or when do you know exactly who you are? And you said at 40 years of age, you
40
have
years.
discovered who you are. And I
Mhm.
know in our conversation, I'm a lot older than you. And I've said this. I said, you're going to discover at 45 a different you. You're going to discover a different you at 50, a different you at 60. But I'm glad you discovered who you are right now. Um, how does the person discover? Because you mentioned one of the things repeatedly. How do they discover happiness when they have no faith or no connection to faith?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think that our spiritual self isn't tied to like a specific religion, right? That although, and to be honest, I grew up Catholic, very connected to God my entire life. but God was kept outside of me. As a little girl, having conversations with my priest, I said, "Oh, if I can't get to church, is it okay if I pray to God from home?" No, it's not okay. God's at church. What about Jesus? Here I am, 8 years old. What about Jesus? Can I talk to Jesus? No, Jesus is at church. And so it kept God outside of me my entire life at some kind of location. And they never said that God is everywhere in everything inside of you, that you are, if God is the ocean, I am a droplet of that same ocean. Nobody said that to me till I discovered my spiritual self through the practice of meditation. And I had a stack of books on my nightstand where all the questions that I had of my life, why aren't I happy? If I had arrived at half my life, could I imagine living the same life for the next 40 years? Is this all there is to life? So I had deep questions that no one outside of myself was going to be able to answer for me. And so with my stack of books, I said, only God's going to be able to know and the answers to these questions that I have. And so I went to a medium, and she said, because I said, I need to talk to God. How come other people can hear from God? How come they can see him and I can't? She said, Spirit is telling me that you need to meditate. And this was over 10 years ago. So I was like, I don't know what that is. And so I ended up going to a meditation center, ironically, directly across the street from my church, who showed me what to do. And they will tell you that I cried for an entire year every time I went, because when I connected to my spiritual self, it was like that alleluia moment, like you would hear the angels go. They had been waiting their like my entire life to talk to me, but nobody had told me what to do. That they had taught me to pray and to speak outward, but never to silence myself enough to be able to hear that my higher self, spirit, God, universe, whatever anybody wants to call it, it's all the same thing, speak to me. So when you said, if someone isn't connected to faith, it's not going to be, maybe, I mean, not to say you can't get there through religion, absolutely, but I don't think that's the only way that we're going to discover our spiritual self, because it's bigger than religion.
All right. 40 years old. How did you discover happiness with all those things? The great husband, the freedom to travel at will, to have the home of your dreams, to have the kids, the family you desire, to have a social circle. And up to that point, you've had this aha moment at 40 years old. How did happiness come at 40 years old? And what had happened to you 39 years before
Mhm.
40?
So when I said that I had lost myself, and then you said, well, how did you discover your authentic self? I believe that I'm always every day discovering my true and authentic self, because I'm peeling back the layers of programming, conditioning, belief systems, paradigms that were ingrained within me as a child who doesn't know anything about this human experience. And people, again, well-meaning, tell you, oh, this is the kind of life that you're going to have because of the color of your skin, because of your religion, because of the country you're born in, because of your culture, because of your education, because of the money, because lots of different things. They tell you what your human existence is going to be like. And it's only until we pull back the layers. So I felt like I was in a cloak like this, going through life, not knowing who I was. And it's only until now that I'm peeling back the layers, am I discovering my true and authentic self every single day, because she's underneath all of that programming and conditioning. So I haven't I believe that part of our purpose is to uncover who we really are, so that we can discover who we were meant to be in this lifetime. And only until we uncover who that is can we fully step into the person that we are meant to be and the reason why we came here to have this human experience. So um, I think I kind of answered your question that I'm discovering who I really am every single day because I dive deep, I do the work. When I first met you, we had a pre-interview call. That day was like one of those days that I was like digging deep and unearthing some of that like deep buried stuff inside of us that like has to come out so that we can continue to move closer into the person that we really are.
Well, I know that day I became closer to you. And the reason why I became closer because, you can only come or connect to someone that allows themselves to feel comfortable with you or to be vulnerable. And so I would have never brought up that conversation, but I did feel closer to you. But I do want to say I have to segue in order to talk about our sponsor. When we talk about happiness, I want to talk about my happy feet. I always say, let your feet and your body do what your feet are naturally designed to do. I say this from personal experience, working 12-hour days, being on my feet. I'm in the fitness business outside of speaking. I travel. And believe it or not, every single day, my ankles, my knees, and my back, they scream at me at the end of the day. And it wasn't until I became personal friends with a guy by the name of Steven Sashin that we talked about trying barefoot shoes. If you want to learn more about going barefoot, click on the link in this interview, watch the video, and learn about how your feet could be happy in barefoot shoes. So, with that said, there are certain steps that you follow because you now make a living at coaching happiness. Like I said, you have a TV internet show and you
Mhm.
host another radio show. Tell us about those radio shows and how they connect to happiness and how does that go on? How does that work in on your end of the world?
Thank you. So one of the shows is called The Steps to Happiness with Teresa Greco. It's on a platform called Soul Liberty TV. Also is on YouTube. And the show's in reruns there. It began as a radio show and then transitioned to internet TV. Then I have another show called The Happy Hour and with Teresa Greco, and that is on Skyward TV on Roku. And it is on YouTube and it is on all the podcast platforms too. And then I have two shows that I collaborate with. One is called Solivity Today, which is a morning show that gets broadcasted throughout the US on different stations. And then I have another show called Building Joy that I have with someone who is trying to bring more happiness to those who work in the trades. So I share on through all of my writing, through all of the shows, through my TEDx talks. It's all about sharing the practical steps that people can take to live their happiest lives. Because I find that when we talk about mental health, and May was Mental Health Month, oftentimes is talking about the mental illness the whole time. That you will listen to, a discussion about supposed to be about mental health, but they talk about the mental illness the whole time and they don't share any of the practical steps to get ourselves to the mental health side. They just at the end say, oh, if this is you, go and speak to a health practitioner. Well, often a health practitioner will just give you a script and doesn't share with you the practical steps. I see happiness as a two-sided coin. So when you ask me about what do you do to, what are the steps? So happiness is a two-sided coin is like this. One side is there could be blocks that are preventing you from feeling the happiness that you always are and are in abundance. And so it is important to deal with those blocks. So I'll use the analogy of the sun, that the happiness is like the sun. It is always shining and shining brightly. However, there are times in our lives when the clouds go in front, and it doesn't mean that the sun isn't there. It just means that we need to deal with the clouds. When you choose to deal with the clouds, that's up to you. I choose to deal with them right away. As soon as I start to feel a little misaligned, I'm like, uh-oh, let me dig into my happiness toolkit that has all the different things that I do to realign myself with the happiness that I am. And so that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is how much time do you make to connect with the happiness that's inside of you? So another analogy would be that happiness is like the electricity that's flowing through all of the walls. And there's a socket that helps us to plug in to the happiness that we are. If we're working 60 to 80 hours a week, how much time are you leaving yourself to plug in to the happiness that is flowing throughout your body all the time? It is a part of who you are, and they're in abundance. But if you don't make any time to plug in and to feel the happiness throughout the entire essence of who you are, then you're not going to feel happy. So my through the so I have two coaching programs on my website. One is called Mental Freedom that deals with the blocks. So every day there is possibly a reason that we get pulled away from the happiness that we are for because we don't live in isolation. We live within other people. We live in a global world. There's lots of things that can help that can pull us away. And so we have to know what are those things? What are the tools that we can use to help to realign? Then the other side of the toolkit is again, what are those things that help you to plug in? And so for everybody, that's different, what it is that helps you to feel the happiness that you are.
Does everyone deserve to be happy? Or is happiness only reserved for a chosen few?
Happiness, again, is a part of our essential self. So it isn't, we can not be happy. It is who we are. It's like our arm. Happiness is like our arm. It's like, but you may not recognize that it's your arm because nobody has taught you that it is. Everything that I know about happiness, I know because of my conversations with spirit. That I only knew about happiness what everybody else knows. And so what I've learned through the various spiritual practices that I've done over the last 10 years is that they have given me clarity. So the way that I speak about happiness is not how we usually talk about it here, because in Western society, we just say that happiness is a state of mind. Happiness is a choice. Happiness is not just choosing to be. Happiness is who you are. The essence of who you are is happiness. It it is it's that. It's almost hard to describe because it is the energetic part of you. That part is always vibrating up here. But if we're not in alignment with that again, then we're not feeling it. So we don't have to do anything to be happy. We don't have to, because you said your question was, do we have to, what did you ask me that it was that we needed to do to be happy? And I said, no, we are already happy.
I asked you if people deserve to be
Oh,
happy.
of
Was it
course.
an option, or was it reserved for a
Mhm.
select few and other people just designed to be unhappy? And the reason why I asked that question, and I should have clarified it earlier, because I know, people used to condemn Oprah Winfrey, at least in my community, and said because Oprah was a multimillionaire, it was easy to speak on all these positive affirmations, and she's surrounded by all these positive people. If she lost it all, do you think she'd still be happy?
Mhm.
Do you think, with your life, if right now everything that you have in your life right now, perfect children, if your children turned on you for whatever reason, if your husband decided that he no longer wanted to be your husband, if the mortgage somehow got neglected and you had to move into a smaller home and move back into your family, in the event that your business wasn't thriving at the rate that it's thriving right now and people weren't listening to you, your TV show got canceled, your radio show, your internet show got canceled, and it was just you,
Mhm.
could you still be happy?
Mhm. We can all still be happy because it is a part of who because it's a part of the essence of who we are. We cannot help anything that's outside of ourselves. So a lot of what you said is the world outside of me, right? My show getting canceled, my husband doing whatever, my kids doing what that is the world happening outside that I have no control over. All I have control over is myself and my response to what's happening outside. And so is it going to be hard? Yes, as I said, that the world is constantly misaligning us. We get pulled in many different directions, but it's recognizing that we've been pulled away and taking the steps that we know work for us to realign ourselves. Now, this leads me into talking about when I said that some of the things in our happiness toolkit are the things that help us to connect. If you believe that the things that have you connecting, so this is the questions that I asked Spirit over COVID. I said, well, how do you expect me to be happy if I can't go shopping, if I can't go and have drinks on a patio, if I can't hang out with my friends, if I can't go to concerts, if I can't do this and I can't do this and I can't, that's what everyone, how do you expect us to be happy when the whole world is shut down and I can't do the things that make me happy? Spirit said to me that those things are only a vehicle that helps you to connect to a place inside of you that is always happy. So your happiness is not dependent on the vehicle that's helping you to connect. So it's important for us to differentiate between the vehicle and what true happiness really is. And so, as you said, if my happiness, and this is the problem, people's happiness is tied to those external things that you rattled on, that their happiness is tied to my show and tied to my spouse and tied to my kids and tied to my work. It's not. That I was very content sitting on my back patio, looking at what could be like a very boring backyard and feeling very happy and content because I was connected to the essence of who I am that is always loving, at peace and happy. And it takes no money. It takes no external things to help me turn inward and connect with a place inside of me that is always that. So, yes, we can be happy when the world outside of us is doing things outside of our control. It's a matter at that point, I believe, to go inward, to speak to your inner being versus your outer being. And when you connect to that place inside of you, is where you truly find your love, your peace, and your happiness.
That was a drop your mic moment. And I will say, and I'll say this to my listeners, my question was more so of avoidance of pain. I did not mean to paint such an oblique picture of your life, and hopefully none of that ever happens to you. But unfortunately, every single successful person I've ever known that has ever hit that utopia of where their dreams lie has had experience on one of those levels that they had to overcome. And you said it better. You control the things that you control. And you make the decision to be upset. You make the decision in order to move on. And you have the power. And I say this all the time, you're only as strong as your last no. All right. You can't say yes to things that you want to say no to 20 minutes after you started doing those things. And I'm glad. I'm big on quotes. Okay. For those of you that don't know it, T is in a part of my social circle, and every morning, and she hasn't cursed me out yet. I get up at 3:47 in the morning and I write down my first thought. And I told Corey Portier, the only time that you're ever going to not hear from me is that in the event I have a thought that I can't share with my group. And so if it's rated in a letter of the alphabet, I will not share it because it's inappropriate, or that God has finally called me home. That's the only time you're not going to hear. But fortunately for me, my last concussion has triggered one side of my brain that's more creative than anything else. And every morning is my way of saying how grateful I am because God gives me a conversation that starts my day. So I'm big on quotes. When you talk about happiness and you make a statement, you've got multiple TEDx talks. Is there a favorite quote or something that you carry with you every single day that reminds you? Because sometimes we have to, because people test us. we have to remind for a moment, we have to come in and go, and kind of bring it in because people, when they see you happy, they want to see you unhappy so they can justify their happiness. Do you have a quote that kind of keeps you grounded? I know I do.
Mhm. Well, one of my favorite quotes is the one from Gandhi that says, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And because the truth of that statement is that it really does begin with you. How you show up in the world is the world that you're actually going to see on the outside. So our external reality is always mirroring our internal one. So if you want to say, "Oh my God, my life is so chaotic. My kids are all over the place. My house is so messy. My workplace is like this and that," and it's so chaos outside, it's because it's chaotic inside. That once we work on ourselves and we create the world that we want, the reality that we want to see on the outside, we have to get right within ourselves. And so I'll say that when I was at the low point of my life, or when my happiness journey, let's say, began, was when I felt that I was always being disrespected, always being dishonored, and not being loved, constantly judged by others. And the truth was, I was doing that to myself. I wasn't respecting myself when I allowed other people to disrespect me. I was dishonoring myself when I wasn't showing up as my true and authentic self. And I was trying to be who I thought everyone else wanted me to be so that I could be loved, liked, and accepted. I wasn't loving myself when I said and believed horrible things about myself, that instead of being my greatest cheerleader, I was my own worst enemy. I criticized, belittled, degraded myself all the time inside of my head. And a lot of that inner self talk was things that were said to me over the living of my life, where people said, "You're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not smart enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not religious enough, you're not enough of lots of different things." And all of those things became the internal things that I said to myself on repeat. The things that adults say outside or external become the internal voice of a child. Adults have to be very aware of the fact that that's the truth, that the things that they say out loud, they just think, "Oh, yeah, it's fine to say those things," actually become the internal voice that you have playing on repeat in your head until you realize that those things are not serving you. And now I'm working so much on trying to change that internal voice to the truth of that which I really am. My spiritual self tells me what my truth is. It loves me unconditionally, Kevin. We live in a world of conditional love, unfortunately, where we're only loved when we behave a certain way, when we look a certain way, when we do things that other people want us to do, all of that. And when we don't do it, then, "Oh, I don't love you anymore." And we only love some people and not others. My my inner being, my higher self, loves me unconditionally. And when I'm feeling like I'm not loved and appreciated, that's when I need to go inward. That our spiritual self is like that fountain, you call it the fountain of youth, but it is like the fountain of love. That when we go inward, we are washed over with so much love. And when we do that a lot, Kevin, we end up radiating that outward into everyone and everything that we do. And when you said that there's, those people who don't want to see you happy, and they do mean things, and they don't act out of love, it's because they're disconnected from the love that they really are. And so when I'm feeling depleted, overwhelmed, stressed, misaligned, disconnected, I know where I need to go into the fountain of love. And when I tap into that and I drink from that fountain, is therefore that I can bring forward into the world that I'm a part of. And so that's how I create the reality that I want to be, that I want for myself and for others, by tapping into that fountain of love.
I am so glad you spoke so eloquently about positive self-talk over negative self-talk. Dan Sullivan presents this as the gap in the gain. You know, the gap is all the negative outside forces and the things that you bring into your head. You start to give it life, and the gain is looking at and being the ultimate optimist, like you said. No matter whatever life may bring to me, I'm just going to celebrate it because that's just part of life. I'm going to control the things that I have to control. You're a highly intelligent person. I mean, not only, stunningly beautiful, you are extremely connected, not only to your heart, but to the universe, because we do know this whole life that we live is energy. And I know it speaks to you. I know one of the things that when I always have more questions than answers, and a lot of times I find those answers. And when I start talking to myself, I journal, I track conversations, I remember moments like this that we have. And I'm going to tell you today, all right, and as a friend, you are loved today, not only by me, but you are loved by the universe. Because in order for this to happen, the energy has to be there for this to exist. And we're putting it out there because we want to heal some other people that are broken. And a lot of times, the reason why our lives are broken is because we want to allow ourselves to fix it. So, do you journal? And
Mhm.
why is that important? And do you teach that with your clients?
Mhm. I do journal. When I began journaling, I had it as a gratitude journal where every day I would try to think of science as 5 things that you can think of every day to be grateful for. I even had there was a 30-day gratitude program that I was a part of where when you actually think of the 5 things, you can make it like thematic. And so, one day is what are 5 things that I'm grateful for about my partner? And not just, oh, I'm grateful for my partner, I'm grateful for my kids, I'm grateful for my house, I'm grateful for the food, I'm grateful, like what specific things about each of those, and picking that apart for that 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes of gratitude in those 5 things releases 1,400 biochemicals in the body that actually stay in the system for up to 6 hours. And so if you do it at the very beginning of your day, it has long lasting effects all day. But if you can do it at any moment that you start to feel angry, frustrated, anxiety, stress, whatever it is, you know how it feels when it's like something's washing over you. Gratitude is one of those immediate things that if you can do that, um, a suggestion that somebody gave me once was like taking a picture out from your wallet or like having a picture on your phone that you can immediately look at and say all the things that you're grateful for about that picture. So maybe, your family's in there and you were on vacation and you were having the best time. And like, why were you having the best time? Because we were laughing so much. And we got to spend so much time together because our lives are so busy. And it's like that, like when you really dive into like all the things that you're grateful for, it does this. It does this. It allows your heart and mind to connect. And that's when you become like invincible in those moments when your mind is connected to your heart, right? And we know with heart math that a lot of that science that they're proving that heart and mind coherence or brain coherence is where like magic happens when we can do that. But that's the truth. And so when I initially started to journal, it was some of my journaling was just that, picking apart all of the things. So like one day it was like all the things I loved about my son. And it was like, I'm not just thankful for him, like I'm thankful for his laugh, for his humor, for his affection, his kindness. So many beautiful things. And it's things that we often overlook because we're so consumed with the clouds instead of the sun that lays behind those clouds. And when we do something like gratitude or when we journal about another thing I love about journaling, and this is the same thing with, there are certain types of meditations you can do too that You can just be your true and authentic self in your journal, right? You can write down about the dreams and aspirations that you have for yourself without people poo-pooing on those and saying, "Oh, you'll never achieve that because you don't have the education, you don't have the money, you don't have, a whole list. Oh, it never worked for me, and oh, and you don't have this, and lots of reasons why people think it'll never work out for you." But guess what? What's on our heart to do is not what's on your heart to do. What's on my heart to do is because that's what I came here to do. When I chose to have this human experience, I know what's on my heart to do. And so when we journal, it's a beautiful way of being able just to be free, to say, oh, I see myself traveling around the world and speaking to large groups of people and spreading my message of happiness to as many people as I can, and uplifting and motivating and inspiring people to live their best life by really knowing that they can achieve the dreams and aspirations that they have for themselves, and not to listen to the naysayers and not even to share it with them. Hold it on your heart and work tirelessly if you can towards achieving the things that are on your heart to do, because those are the gifts that we were meant to bring to this world. They're not other people's, they're ours, ours to share. And my mission of trying to make the world a happier place are my gifts that I know that I'm here to share. And that other people talk about happiness, true, probably, yeah. But do they talk about it in exactly the same way that I do? Or in the same way or the way that I do? No. We're all beautiful, unique, special, magnificent, and extraordinary in all of our special, special ways. And that's what we need to remember about ourselves, and to let that shine forth into everything that we do. And so journaling is a beautiful way to be able to express some of that, to collect your thoughts, and then take action upon what you've written down, because it's like saying to the universe, this is what I need help with, universe. I need help with these things. And the universe is like, okay, we're going to conspire to make all of that happen for you. So, yes.
You've done a beautiful job at articulating not only what we should hear, but also sharing what's on your heart. I've always said, and when I'm coaching people, I always say, do not carry someone on your dream when they're dragging their feet on their own dream. And that's why I said, you're only as strong as your last no. Sometimes you've got to let um, some people go. And sometimes that's painful. And some people get they get drugged down into a dark place because they're trying to bring someone else up with them. It's not ready. It's not their time. It's not their season. How do you avoid having happiness sucked out of you? How do you avoid the pain of human casualties? And how do you let go? And how would you instruct someone in order to free yourself of it? How do you instruct someone to move on, to say goodbye?
Thank you. And I had to say goodbye to my best friend that I've had since grade six, since we were 12. Um, we lots of we shared lots and lots of beautiful moments, but unfortunately, COVID was one of those things that kind of brought our relationship, I think, into the spotlight. That we had in fact um, moved away from the alignment that we had. That I, was doing things and the things that I do, and her not really in alignment with those, and her doing other things. And so COVID, our disagreement over vaccines and things like that, brought our relationship, after, I don't know, over 30 years of friendship, into the highlight. So I made the choice that because of words that were exchanged, to not have her continue to be a part of my life. Um, and I think that there are times that we have to make those decisions to let go of people who are no longer serving us. and who no longer have the same vision for the life that I'm trying to create for myself. I think it is so important for us to surround ourselves with people who have the same vision and mission. We are always broadcasting a signal, and we are a magnet for that which is of that same signal. And that's the law of attraction that is bringing that to us, that is of liken to us. And so if I am broadcasting 98.5, but I want the things that are at 103.5. I'm never going to receive them until I work on myself and raise my energetic vibration to then emit a signal that is of that same. So I need to be 103.5 to receive that. Alternatively, whatever signal you are giving out, you're going to be a magnet. So somehow me and you found each other. And when you and I are speaking here today, there is a resonance between the both of us that I feel immensely. Like that's why I've been overwhelmed with emotion, because the energy that you are radiating is very powerful, and it's so beautiful, Kevin, that I feel it immensely, which is what also is helping me to be as authentic and as vulnerable as I am in the sharing of myself and my ideas and my heart with you and your audience and your listeners today, because of the energy that you are broadcasting. And your energy was a magnet that brought me into your reality and helped us to meet one another. And so when you look at, what are you bringing into your reality? You need to think of what signal are you broadcasting. So those people who say, oh, I can never find the right boyfriend. I never have the right relationships. I never am meeting the wrong people. Well, what signal are you broadcasting? Are you broadcasting your true and authentic self? Or are you trying to be someone who you think other people are going to like? And of course, you're never going to attract that which is like you if you're not broadcasting your true and authentic signal. So if you want someone that's 103.5, but you're broadcasting 98.5, you're never going to get that amazing person who respects you and loves you and treats you the way that you want to be treated. It's because you need to also broadcast that signal for you to attract that which you want. And so and I'm bringing this example up because you talked about relationships, about letting people go. So there are times that we're broadcasting a signal and other people aren't resonating with that, aren't in line with that. And that's okay. And so, like, if we look at life like a train, with all the different train cars and we're going through life, and some people are going to hop on that train and be with us. What's that saying, like a day, a week, a season, a reason, a lifetime,
Mhm.
stuff like that, right? Where people might be on riding the train for a bit and then they're off, and then somebody comes on and we ride with them for a little bit and they're off, and maybe someone comes back on later on, on the train ride of our life. But I think it's okay, and we don't have to mourn those relationships that are no longer aligned with who we've become.
Right.
And I'm no longer aligned with her. And that's okay, because I don't I don't need to be in the presence of people who don't actually value me, and that don't feel that, when they've left me, that I want people to feel when they've left my presence, that they feel better about themselves and their life. I want them to feel happier about having like met me and had spent time with me. That's the person that I want to be for others. And if other people aren't receiving that for whatever reason, then that's okay. It's okay. And so we have to always think about how can we be more around those that help us to be the person that we want to be and the people that we're trying to become.
No, I I'm touched by what you said, personally by me. It's hard for me to accept conversations like this, and I wake up every day knowing I've been here before. I wake up every single day knowing that there's a reason why I'm here, and it's not to serve me, but to serve others. I know when I was setting up for this interview, I said, I too, in different conversations in my speeches, I talk about, the principles of happiness, and I have my outline, which you've done very, very well. And all I can do is say thank you, much appreciate what you've said. You have no idea. My cup is overflowing because of the conversation we have. My heart has skipped 2 beats because of the way that I'm attached to you. I'm a fan on different levels. I'm the first person in line to your show. I'll be the last person to leave. And I hope that when you sign my autograph, I will hold it close to my chest. So, with that said, I know I have my principles of happiness, and you're the expert on this because it took a couple layers in order for me to find. It took me actually me climbing a mountain till I became free of everything that was drawing from me, and I realized that I was at beacon that I was supposed to pour into other people. So it took a climb for me to get on top of a mountain and to be neutral for a little bit, to be away from social media, to be away from every other thing that was distracting me. I had to get away from all that was temptate that was listed as temptation, and I had to be open for whatever God to receive whatever God was going to bring me, and He brought me you. Look at that. So
And
with that
and
said, I can gush over you all day long, the happiness coach. But I know our people are sitting there with pen and paper, and they want to know what are the steps to happiness? Is it 5 steps? Is it 10 steps? What's the steps? Can you go ahead and share those steps with us and why?
thank you. But just before I get into that, I just want to say how much thank you, all of that means to me. But also, you say that with such humility. Um, and I think that we don't see many people that are humble these days. And I'm listening to you. You're sharing all these beautiful things about me, but I feel like that about you. And that even in the sharing of what you just said, it's like you are so great and magnificent. And I feel so blessed to be on this show and to have time with you and to be, in your inner circle, to be able to receive your like first morning thoughts that um I just wanted to say thank you so much. But I just think that you're so awesome and amazing. And you just say that with just almost like such a straight face, but it's your humility that is so endearing and so beautiful. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. People poured into me. The title of my most recent book is I Got to Get the World Ready for You because the world's not ready. My Uncle Bill, my cousin Ronnie, my high school coach, Mr. Russo, and my grandfather always told me I had to get the world ready for me. And when my grandfather said, when you get to a point that you can help someone else out, he said, reach one, each one. So my whole life has been about one thing since the third grade. When I was asked if this was my last day on earth, how do I want to be remembered? And I said, I just wanted to be remembered that I made a difference in someone's life. My one word was hope, helping other people every day. And so that's what I focus on. I stay true to my mission to educate people, to inspire people, to give them a voice, and to showcase people that other people need to know. I have a lot of friends that are celebrities, that are stars, whatever. But the people that really make a difference in the world is people that personally have a commitment to helping someone else. And you are one of those people. You have a personal commitment to helping someone else. You're not trying to line your pockets. You're not trying to build a bigger house. You're not trying to see all corners of the world. What you're trying to do is make an impression on someone's heart to allow them to turn that key, to open up their life, to be more optimistic, to be more true to themselves. All right. And then to take some chances and then celebrate the fact that sometimes, life will knock you down, but celebrate the fact that God gave you hands and legs so you can get back up. He gave you a voice so you could be heard. If it's not for people such as yourself, I wouldn't have a show.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have to give this back to you. I am so grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
let's go ahead and talk about those steps. What are the
Okay.
steps that you have to happiness?
All right. So I have my top steps. Although in everyone's toolkit, you should know what are those vehicles that help you to connect to the happiness that you are. My top step would be meditation that I've already mentioned. I believe that it is that gateway practice that helps you to connect with your inner being instead of your outer being. And your inner being knows why you came here to this planet. It knows what you wanted to learn, what you wanted to experience, the difference that you wanted to make, the gifts that you were going to share, the path that you were going to live. It knows it all. And it's only until we make time to connect with that can we know all of that information instead of asking everyone else. That's what we're conditioned to do. What do you think? What do you think? Let me do this online survey. Let me do this this little test. All of these outside things. Let me spend thousands good to go work with a guru. Let me Meanwhile, your inner being has all the answers on the inside, but again, we're not taught to connect with that. And so meditation, I believe, is one of those things. Now, I am a meditation coach, because me too, I was curious about, is meditation where you have to like sit there with the candles and the crystals and the comfy clothes and the incense burning and the sage and the music. And that's just like, you think, oh boy, if I don't have this entire setup, then I'm not going to be able to meditate there for like 1 hour. And there are so many different forms of meditation. So I'm saying this only to say, if some people have tried, because I still get that, some people have tried and they're like, I just can't meditate. And I'm not just saying that it's hard. That's why it's called a practice, a meditation practice, because some days are going to be harder than others because our mind is like constantly just chattering, all the things we have to do, all the things we're worried about, all the things, all the things. And so meditation is about getting to that place where you have no thought, but that took years for me to get to a place that I could do that and maintain that place of like stillness. But how many monks, like Zen monks and Buddhist monks that are like, that's their whole life is trying to get to like that kind of zero thought place where they just be, but it's hard. And so I would say, if one form of meditation doesn't work for you, to try another form that does. You don't have to meditate for an hour. You can meditate for 5 minutes. You still reap tons of physiological benefits just from that. So meditation would be my first step.
Right. So how do people get in touch with GT?
People can get in touch with me definitely from my website. So it's teresagreco.ca. So you can find me there. I'm all over on all the social media platforms. So on Instagram, it's Teresa Greco _ steps to happiness. On Facebook, it's Steps to Happiness with Teresa Greco. On YouTube, it's Teresa Greco _ steps to happiness. Teresa Greco on Twitter, on TikTok, also Steps to Happiness or Teresa Greco.
All right. And her last name is spelled Greco. All right, all right. So I want to thank Corey Portier for connecting the two of us. I think that would be funny. I brought this up to Corey. He has a book, The Enlightened Passenger, that he just released. I think you and I, for just for the fun of it, we should rewrite his book and have us be the enlightened passengers and be that person and see what would happen. I told him I wanted to do that, but I didn't know if he was going to be offended because I got a little bit of sense of humor. What if I sat next to you on the plane and we had this talk? All right. Great book, people. And I have to ask this one question. Why don't you have a book out yet?
So I have four best-selling co-authored books, and then I have my own that's entitled The Steps to Happiness. However, I can't release it because it's the appendix to my PhD. So my dissertation's on happiness, and it's attached to that. So I can't release it until my PhD is done. So my book was actually done like 3 years ago when I started the PhD process. I was about to release it, and then the university that the universe brought to me um, was like, "Have you published your book?" And I said, like, I'm like a month out. And they're like, "No, no, no. Thank goodness you haven't published it yet because it's the appendix to my book." So in my dissertation, I am going through what are those steps, all based on science, although Spirit didn't give them to me as scientific steps, but they've all been backed by science. So my dissertation goes into the science around all of the different steps that can help us to connect with our inner happiness.
All right. And the reason why I asked that question, and I know in the beginning of the show I said best-selling author. I know that you had collaborated with other authors, but you did not have a book, a solo book out on your own. So it's not like I'm not reading my notes. I know my notes. I do my homework on every single guest. Teresa, I want to thank you, but before I let you go, I just want to let you know I've created this year a list of 100 people and their secrets to success. And I want to ask your permission to be able to add Teresa Greco to that list of people that's living a highly effective life, not necessarily the success of the tangible things, but that are pouring into other people. Or most of us walk around with our cup half empty. Your cup is pouring over. And I want to ask your permission if I can add you to that list. Do you mind?
Oh, I would be so honored. And I just got goosebumps all over. How lovely. Thank you so much. Thank
Well,
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
I have a very select group of people. Now, one more thing I'm going to ask. I asked 99.9%. And the reason why I'm asking this, when I created my show and I first came on my podcast, people gave me a lot of advice on how to get followers and listeners and get people to do this and whatever. And I said I wanted to grow my show the same way I grew my business, one person at a time and through genuine relationships. And so when I tell people, if you like the show, please share it because that's how we get our message out. And you gave a great interview today. So I'm asking you and your friends to share it. But for those that subscribe, I want to add you to that circle of friends. My friends have a very high call to action. They don't drive by an accident. They stop to help. So with that said, August 4th of this year, 2024, has been my third year doing my podcast. To this date, I've had 5 people that have answered this question. What is your ask? And ask big. That some total stranger has granted them their life's wish. Now, some of us live our whole life and never have one dream come true. I have 5 people that are attached to this show. I know 3 other people that have helped them, just random people that when they ask this, they answer the question to this ask. And I say, Teresa, ask big because there's someone listening that cares. Someone that is in a position to where my grandfather had said it is your duty to help someone else when you get to the point that you can to do so. So I'm going to sit back and I'm going to ask you and let you think for a little bit. If you had one ask or one dream to come true, what would that ask be?
Mhm. And it's that which I ask every single day, which is to be an international motivational speaker. I want to bring which is not my message, it's God's message of happiness, that I see myself as a messenger of God, to be able to bring his message of happiness to as many people as possible. And I would love to bring it to as many communities as I can, to as many like age groups that I can. So I would, to university students or, whoever that might, because I work with people of all ages, but to be able to have this truth, because we are not living our happiest lives because it's never truly been defined correctly. And so I feel like it's my duty to be able to help people to know what it really is, because then like a huge weight can be taken off of your shoulders when you know that you don't need to buy more things, you don't need to earn happiness, you don't need to be worthy of happiness, you don't need to search for it, wait for it, achieve it, any of those things, that it is you, that the infinite eternal essence, the truth of who you are is happiness. And then when you know that, then all you need to do is actually just be, just be to connect with it as I was like on my back porch during COVID, just connected to the essence of that we are, that fountain of love that I spoke about. So that would be my wish, somebody to help me to bring my message to as many people as possible.
Well, the energy that surrounds us, I feel that your dream is going to come true. I really do. I say this one because COVID brought out a lot of good things and bad things out of other people. I had the best time during COVID. I was happy we shut down. I was enjoying my best life. I was working out every day. But I also want to say is that, one of my best friends is Les Brown. He is one of the top motivational speakers in the world. He has been on stage with Mel, Tony Robbins, um, Gary V, you name it, he's been on stage. But it's time for the passing of the guard. Corey, phenomenal speaker. I spoke to a young man just before we did our interview, Mr. Scott McDermott, yourself. I've had this vision from the day that I started this podcast that one day we would be on tour, a group of people. And I talk about the power of your words and the actions that follow. You talk about happiness. Corey talks about, being the change that you want to see. When I spoke to Scott, he talked about resilience of suffering a life changing accident, and it changed his life. And now he's living his best life today. I think it's time for us to go on the road.
Mhm.
All right. I think it's time for us to pick up a major sponsor to allow us to reach a whole generation that needs to hear a conversation that needs to be had. I got a feeling your dream is going to come true. I'm telling you, I've got that feeling. And, I got to get the world ready for you because the world's not ready. And I hope to our listeners that you've enjoyed this conversation. It wasn't an interview, it was a conversation between friends. We just happened to share it with you. And I hope you enjoyed being part of this conversation. I hope that if something we've said or Teresa has said that has touched you, that's moved you, and if you're looking for questions, answers to your questions, that you'll reach out to Teresa on our social media page and you'll connect with Teresa and allow her to help you through your passage to happiness. If you like what you've heard, I will say go to RMK Productions and network on our YouTube page, and I'll ask you to share this video. If you're one of those people that have a high call to action, I will tell you to go ahead and subscribe and follow this podcast. And if you have someone that would love to be on this show and there's someone that we should know, I am showcasing people we should know. Go to info@rmkproductions.org. Teresa Greco, my good friend T, I want to thank you for sharing this time and space with not only me, but the 10,000 people that listen to this podcast. I just want to thank you for being you and being a gift to this world. Is there one thing that you would like before we sign off to share with our listeners or to have them take away from this interview?
I think it's something that you said during the interview when you said you were loved. And I want everybody to know that too, that they are loved and that they are loved. I think at the core of who we are and that which we're really searching for, because happiness is a facet of love. Love is like the prism. And when the light shines through the prism, it creates this beautiful rainbow of colors. And the colors that come out of that prism are happiness and joy and peace and harmony and all the beautiful feeling emotions. But the core of who we are is love. And so know that you are loved and that you are loved.
All right, and I'm going to take that love one more step further, and I'm going to toss it over to my sponsors, Xero Shoes. I'm going to say, if you are loved, then love your feet. Let your feet do what they're naturally designed to do. If you're like me, your hips, your ankles, and your knees are screaming at you at the end of the day, find out why it's so good to go barefoot. To learn more about barefoot shoes and Xero Shoes, click on the link that's in the show description. And with that said, my grandfather always said, when you get to a place where you can help someone else, he said it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black and we're out. Thank you, Teresa Greco, for being our guest on the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for this time. Thank you.